All right. First of all, I give you all of you a lot of credit for running because, I mean, I've looked at these issues and I was one of those tax to the max people where the district is spending too much money and whatever. But the more I investigated it, the more I realized how hopeless people on the board must feel and trying to solve this problem. So with that said, there are some members who have run on a cut, don't spend platform in the past, but they've changed their stance once they've gotten on the board and gotten some information. Do you see that happening with yourself? And in many instances, the current school board and the administration, I take it, have been depicted as not doing their job. I would like at least one specific instance from those of you who have suggested that, who have run on a cut, don't spend platform, but they changed their stance once they became a board member for a while and realized the task at hand, that, you know, that they didn't know all the facts before they got on the board. Can you envision yourself possibly changing your mind then? And then a lot of people have branded the current board and the administration as, you know, the evil behind all the financial problems. If that indeed is the case, I'd like at least one specific instance where you can justify that.
I want to reiterate something that Doug said. He talked about what we used to call in the military Spendex. When I was in the military, I had a $3 million ammunition budget. At the end of the year, we literally trucked soldiers out to the range and we would shoot off hundreds of thousands of dollars of ammunition because we knew if we didn't shoot off those hundreds of thousands of dollars of ammunition, we wouldn't get those rounds next year. Now, I understand the school district is not the Army. It's a government organization. So I'm 100% sure that goes on. But let me backtrack a little bit and talk about how did we get here. We got here by listening to the experts. And unfortunately, we have a tendency to listen to experts because they have letters after their names and they went to some highfalutin school. But I can add 2 and 2. And you know what? At some point, you got to be quote-unquote unreasonable. And this is what I mean. In the winter of 1777, George Washington and about 1,000 Americans were unreasonable. They stayed in these little huts outside of Valley Forge, where anybody who was quote-unquote reasonable, where the quote-unquote experts said they should have gone home. Now, I'm not going to say never in terms of the tax levy, because I understand inflation. But at some point, you draw your line in the sand, and you said, no way. Am I being unreasonable? Probably. But you know what? We're not going to increase the size of that rucksack. Because you know who carries that rucksack, that tax burden? The taxpayer. So if that's unreasonable, you know what? Oh well, tell that to George Washington.
All heard tonight how hard it is with the budget. 86% of that pie is already accounted for. You can't touch it. So you get 14%, and we're all talking about how hard it is to make cuts because the needs are there. But the citizens, the feedback we get is that you need to make some cuts. This has to work. So are there any obvious places that you can sit and look at the budget and go, yeah, you know, I think we could do a better job here, or we don't need this money here? And if so, expound on where that would.
Pretty much picked up that a huge part of my adult growing up was in the military. In the military, we talked about foxhole strength. What does that mean? That means in a group, how many of those soldiers are really there doing the fighting? Well, I look at the Manning chart here, and we have approximately 1,100 employees in the school district. You want to guess how many are actually teachers? What percentage? It's under 50%. Out of 1,100 employees, we have about 501 teachers. So by my percentage, that's under 50%. So let me bring this back to another example. When I was in the middle, and when I looked at the Manning chart, a job position popped out that I'm not really 100% familiar with. It's called a teacher's aide. It's already been referred to several times. Well, when I was in the military, when I first joined, every officer had a guy carry his radio for him. He was called the radio man. Well, if you have the guy carrying the radio, he's obviously not a fighter. So you know what they did? They made those officers carry the radio. Well, you better believe those officers had a hard time with that. There was a big howl and scream. But guess what? We had more foxhole strength, and we reduced the budget. So when I look at these teachers' aid, and right now it's about, I think 1 and 2 to 1 in terms of teachers per teacher. It's like 2 teachers for every 1 teacher's aide. Well, why don't we reduce that ratio? I mean, that's one example that just jumped off the page at me. And yeah, we're going to have a howl and scream like the officers did? Yeah. But where's the foxhole strength there?
Enrollment period just started this week, and I was hoping you could just all weigh in on what you think are some of the draws of the West Bend School District to bring new students in, and then also say what you think some of the vulnerabilities are of the district that would cause students to go elsewhere.
First of all, let me respond by saying that I really respect the teachers in the school system. I know a number of the teachers, and I do not for 1 minute, 1 nanosecond, doubt their dedication and their willingness to go, to use a quaint phrase, above and beyond to help the students. So teachers, the ones I know, are a huge draw. So kudos to the teachers. I really respect them. Having said that, it may sound contradictory, but I remember sitting in one of these board meetings, and we had a student from the school district speak up, and his whole line of argument was, "I'm offended." That's all he said. That was his reason for thinking what he was thinking and justifying his decision. "I'm offended." Now, this may be a isolated event. This may be just one student who didn't get it in class. But my kids aren't in, I live here and I have 2 kids here, but my kids aren't in the school district here. My oldest, if you look at my campaign literature, was diagnosed with a mild form of ADHD. We had her in the pre-kindergarten down at Jackson, and it wasn't a fit for us. So she goes to a private school. My other child, we homeschool him. And it goes back to when I sat in that board meeting and I listened to somebody say, "I'm offended, I'm offended." What sort of critical thinking is that? Thank you.